the spring of 1977, Stiff Records wanted the Damned to record and release a second studio album by the end of the year. The band, however, was constantly on the road, promoting their first album, Damn, Damn, Damned, which was released in February of 1977. They dropped a single on July 3rd, 1977, Stretcher Case Baby, with the B-side of Sick Being Sick. It was produced by Shel Talmy, an American music producer who worked with the Kinks and The Who. The band spent a few days in the studio to record the tracks and felt Talmy captured their raw sound perfectly. The single was limited to 5,000 copies and was given away to fans at their first anniversary show, and later to members of their fan club, the Damned Disciples, and as a prize, sponsored by the New Musical Express. Brian James, the leader of the Damned and chief songwriter, felt pressured by his label to come up with new material for their quickly rushed second album and was struggling to write a whole album's worth of songs in such a short time. Rat Scabies helped him co-write the A-side, Stretch Case Baby. During their final stretch of the tour, James came up with several more songs, such as Politics and You Take My Money, but by the end of July, he was suffering from severe writer's block and asked for even more input from the band. Scabies said, "By the time we had got to the second album, I think we were really sort of burning out. Brian's songwriting had begun to waver a bit because there wasn't any time and everything was just hectic. We went in and we just ended up with a very bare bones record. All of a sudden, Brian gave us all the freedom to write, so anything there that is not credited to Brian is pretty much the first music that any of us had ever written. So it was a bit sort of shambolic artistically, but at the same time, it did have some brilliant moments." Around this time, James wanted to add a second guitarist to the band. He wanted to give the Damned a twin sonic guitar sound just like his idols, the MC5. After auditioning 25 guitarists, they settled on Robert Edmonds, who was given the nickname Lu, which was short for lunatic. He could put up with Rat and Captain's hazing and was offered a spot in the Damned. After 2 weeks of rehearsals, Lu went on the road with them. During this tour, James came up with 2 more songs, Problem Child, which was co-written by Scabies, and Don't Cry Wolf. While the Damned was recording their second album in the studio, 2 events occurred which would shape the future of the band. On September 7th, the lead singer, Dave Vanian, got married, and a week later, the Damned's mentor, Mark Bolan, died in a car crash on September 16, 1977. Not wanting to repeat the sound of the first album, Captain Sensible and Rat Scabies tried to get Syd Barrett to produce the album, but they couldn't get a hold of him despite reaching out to him on numerous occasions. They wanted a sound similar to Pink Floyd's first album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Instead, they had to settle for his bandmate, Nick Mason. Unfortunately, he was more interested in talking about motorbikes and race cars instead of music production. Said Captain Sensible, "He was a real mistake. We wanted a sort of production that's on the first Floyd album, especially Rick Wright's keyboard sound, and Nick Mason was available. So we thought, perfect. But he was only interested in his motorbikes. The whole time, he'd be out in the front tinkering with the bloody thing, and occasionally he'd pop in and twiddle a knob or something half-heartedly. It was a real shame, since he was a big hero of mine." Lu recalls, "It's supposedly the most advanced studio on the planet, with all these effects, aural exciters, which were meant to make everything sound even better. Nick Mason was a nice bloke, but I don't think he kind of understood what was going on the same way Nick Lowe did. There were a certain amount of tension going on. I don't even know why they even got me in the band, really. If I look back, I think, why the F did they do that? I think Brian wanted us to be more like MC5. Dave says about the recording, "It was a very rushed album. We went in with Lu Edmonds, and he didn't even know any of the songs. I had words in the studio. We were rushed into doing it. It was badly produced by Nick Mason, who we never should have used." Brian James talked about the album's problems. "It was something forced on us by the record company, who were wagering to cash in on the success. We were knackered for constant touring of the first album and had no time to prepare the songs. All the stress was causing problems within the band, especially as I wanted to expand the sound and add a second guitarist to the lineup so I could be more expressive. This we did with the addition of Lu Edmonds, but it was something the rest of the band weren't really behind. I was also trying to encourage the others to write songs, and to be honest, not really getting far. It was a constant strain and stress, and coupled with the producer, Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, who didn't know anything about us or how to produce what we wanted, it made for a very trying time that ultimately ended in Rat leaving the Damned and me splitting the remaining band up. Dave Vanian co-wrote the song Your Eyes with Brian James. Captain Sensible co-wrote a song with Rat Scabies called Idiot Box, which was a dig at the American rock band Television. Brian James talked about the beef with Television. We were supposed to play a few gigs with them out in San Francisco and Los Angeles after our own tour of the East Coast was over, so we finished up our own gigs and spent our money heading over to Los Angeles to do gigs at the Whiskey A Go-Go, when all of a sudden they decide they don't want us to play with them. So we were stuck in Los Angeles with no money and no gigs, and well, truly effed. Another name for Television is an idiot box, hence the title. The album's final track is the song You Know, which features saxophone solos by jazz musician Lowell Coxill, in a tribute to Brian James's love for the Stooges album Funhouse. The album's cover was designed by Stiff Records in-house design artist Barney Bubbles, which showed all 5 band members on the cover in an abstract fashion. The inner sleeve is in 3D, and the album's title came from a budget label of EMI Records. The album was released on November 18, 1977, and spawned 2 singles, which failed to chart. The album itself also failed to chart as well, despite their first album reaching 34 in the UK record charts and receiving favorable reviews by the music press. The stress of the rushed recording of the album led to Rat Scabies eventually leaving the band. Rat Scabies quit the band during their European tour after a gig in France when he and Brian James had a dust-up. He was replaced by Captain Sensible's buddy, David Burke from the band Johnny Moped. James didn't like Moped, and he was replaced by Future Culture Club member Jon Moss in November, and played with the band until they were dropped by Stiff Records in December. Moss would later be involved in a car crash which left him with a broken nose and over 250 stitches. The band toured once again after Moss recovered, but it just wasn't the same. James said, "Once things started going downhill and Rat left, it weren't the Damned for me anymore, because it was Rat and I who started the Damned. You know, it was us who brought in the other 2 guys, so then it was a question of like, what am I doing here? I'm kind of prostituting myself a bit just now because we've got a bit of a name now. I just wanted to do something radically different and stick a finger up to the punk thing. Punk lasted about a year and then lost it. People started getting into it for the wrong reasons, and it became a fashion parade. The point of punk was that there was never supposed to be a revival." The Damned would officially break up after playing their final gig on February 11th at the College of Further Education in Oxford. On February 14, 1978, Brian James announced the band's breakup by releasing a press release stating, "The split, although sad, was felt to be in the best interest of all concerned. Musical differences of opinion between James and the other members of the group had become increasingly apparent, and a break was the obvious solution." But on April 8, 1978, all 4 original members would reunite for one last time at the Rainbow in Finsbury Park, London, for one final show until they reformed as The Doom a few months later. I personally like the album, and the music on it is pretty catchy. Too bad they couldn't find a decent producer who knew how to properly mix the album. Captain Sensible stated that he would wanted to remix the album properly, but the masters are gone. Mason's production is very pedestrian and blah. You can't even hear a twin sonic guitar attack that James wanted, despite Lu and himself playing on several of the tracks. The band took a chance by recording a second album that wasn't just a rehash of the first one, but it ended up destroying the original lineup of the Damned. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of Cuppy's Music Curios. My name is Cuppy, and I hope to see you soon. Cheerio!